Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Well, howdy folks, my name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we examine, extrapolate, and excavate the scariest movie of all time.
Each episode covers a single minute of William Friedkin's 1973 horror masterpiece, The Exorcist.
If you like deep dives, this show is the deepest.
Did you know the film's iconic theme song, Tubular Bells, wasn't written specifically for the movie?
Or that the 1973 audience members were throwing up and fainting in the theater before they ever got a glimpse of the demon?
What about all the crazy on-set mishaps, cast injuries, the director firing real guns?
Ooh. Ever wonder where Ouija boards came from or how they got their name? How about some history on the Catholic Church or the Roman rite of exorcism? Or maybe we can tempt you with some juicy demonology lore. Did you know that Pazuzu had an ex-wife? Find The Exorcist Minute on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows or at theexorcistminute.com. Until next time, folks,
the power of The Exorcist compels you.
Ever wonder what bridges the gap between your favorite film genres, subgenres, and movements? CinemaScope is here to explore these connections, taking you on a thrilling odyssey through the ever-evolving art of cinema. I'm your host, Andy Nelson, and in each episode, we embark on a deep dive into the forces that sculpt the world of film. From the styles you know and love, like heist films or the French New Wave, to the ones you may not be as familiar with, like Turkish Yeşilçam or Brazilian Nordwesterns, my expert guests and I unravel the complex tapestry of storytelling, style, and innovation that defines the world of film as we unpack the myriad catalysts of change that shape these diverse styles. Whether you're a student of film, a creative professional, or simply a devoted movie enthusiast, CinemaScope is your gateway to a richer, more immersive film experience. Don't just watch movies, understand them, appreciate them, and revel in their artistry with CinemaScope. Subscribe today. Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
Like a breeze over a field of grass, Andy, I am here, and I have always been here, and I shall always be here.
I see you're bringing it today. Well, on today's episode, we have invited cinematographer Florian Hoffmeister to talk about Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, a movie he likes. Florian, welcome to the show.
Hi. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. I've said this earlier, just before we started recording, that I rewatched it today and I'm crumbling under the weight of this announcement. And I've suggested for all three of us to remain in a form of spiritual, appreciative silence for the next 30 minutes. It's what a film. You know,
man.
But anyway, I'm happy to be on the show, and thank you for your interest.
Well, there really is, in terms of movies we like, there's going to be officially a before Florian Hoffmeister and an after Florian Hoffmeister. Like this, I feel like this is going to be pivotal. You've really classed up the joint by bringing Tarkovsky to the show.
I was actually thinking about this. I was asked for a list. I compiled one, and then I thought, what if they pick that one? But, all joking aside, it is an existentialist viewing when you go back, because I saw that film literally, when you start thinking about films. And I've watched quite a few Tarkovskys in my early days. And I have to admit that sometimes you fall asleep, halfway through. But they are like music, isn't it? You can sometimes I just watch a little bit of them, or I watch them all, and like a whole film. And they are so deeply, deeply cinematic. It's like the church of cinema. I was really overwhelmed. And I was almost thinking, maybe I should stop. Maybe I should not work anymore, because I will never be able to reach that.
What else is there?
Remember that time Florian was on our podcast and we broke him? Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Because there is such intimacy and confidence, and the confidence that people will feel and understand this, even though for our more contemporary sensibilities, it sometimes feels like an enigma. But I think it's amazing how you can make a subjective film that speaks to people without me understanding things.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in with this one. before we keep going, let's talk about just you and your career for a little bit, because I want to just paint a picture for the audience as to who you are, how you got into film and everything. Cinematography, camera work, was it watching films like this that kind of inspired you to step into cinematography?
It kind of happened a little bit by chance. I was very interested in film, and I wanted to go to a film school. I ended up going to one that's called the German Film and Television Academy in former West Berlin. So it's, there's also an Eastern school that's on the eastern side of Berlin and Potsdam, but I went to the former West German school, and the course there was more holistic. So it was like a filmmaker's course. And before I applied, because they made a big thing about people having to be slightly older. So they said the ideal age to apply is when you're like 21 and older. So before I applied, I actually did a couple of internships. I thought, I might as well check out a movie set, and by chance, I ended up in the lighting department. And then that quite interested me. And then I went on and worked a year in a rental house for film equipment. And then when I finally got accepted, I was, I always say I was the one that knew how to open the box. And, the camera box, box with the camera inside. And the principal of the school was we were 18 students in a class, and we were split up in groups of 6. And then each of us had to make his own short or her short film. But we also had to do sound, we had to do cinematography, catering. We all had to help each other to make these films. And I just, and I think partly due to my prior knowledge, I just was very good with cinematography. And then second year around, more people asked me to photograph their work, and then I just kind of fell into it. And there's a passion that I have with lighting. I think that's one of the last parts of a production that carry a form of spontaneous mysteriousness to it. It's like a performance almost when we set light, and there's the way that an atmosphere can shape an image subconsciously, that's just very dear to me. So that's how I ended up in the field of cinematography.
And it's interesting the way that you describe that, because one of your more recent and celebrated films that you were a part of was Tar, which is magnificent, and that is all about a conductor and all of the different things that she is doing as she is getting the orchestra to do what she wants them to do, and describing lighting and the way that you paint the light and everything, it makes it sound very much a part of like this cinematic orchestra that you're all part of, and that is you kind of handling all of those instruments and managing them in a way that is kind of bringing that part of the story to life as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned this, of course, it's a seminal film for me. It changed many things, and part of the change was that I'd always admired Todd Field as a director, and it was a great chance to work with him. And he brings, he's the conductor, obviously. He brings a form of bravery to his filmmaking that was very inspiring for me. And I was maybe then like, if you stick with the metaphors, I'd probably the first violinist, maybe, but there is an element, if you take the technical departments aside, obviously when we work with with the lighting department or the gripping department, there is a sense of that conductor in it. Years ago, a director friend that I shot a little film with in Italy, and I remember comes more from writing, so he had written the film, he directed it also, and we talked about the scene. So it's a scene at a little bar, people that's drunk all night, and close the windows, morning light comes in, and then in the morning after they've spent all night drinking, they leave. And he kind of left it all with me, and then he walked, and I set things up, and then he came back and he said to me, "You know what? That's a bit like you've got a bit of a shamanistic quality." And I'd never thought about cinematography that way, because you get all these people then, and then you make them all work so that these images kind of appear. And he, of course, having given me a brief, then walked away, and like that, 30 minutes later, he came back and it was all there. And I thought it's an interesting observation. That's probably why I feel very tired at the end of the day.
That's a perfect punchline. I mean, seriously, though, Tar, what you were able to do for Cate Blanchett to make her as a conductor in those hero moments look like a kaiju, like she's just bigger than life and perfectly keyed and just an extraordinary figure. And that's lighting and frame. But then I have to turn attention to True Detective because you worked on the Jodie Foster season.
Yes, that's correct.
That, I mean, talk about a turn moving from, which is an extraordinary season, by the way. I mean, it was beautiful. I know you didn't do the whole thing, but a whole, you did the whole thing?
I did the whole thing. I did the whole thing. Yeah.
Bless you. Okay. So you did the whole thing. And it's just an extraordinary feat to take what you're doing and turn it into something beautiful in ice. Can you talk a little bit about the conditions that you're working under there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you put these things in relation and describe actually the term, because there was a little bit of that I almost dived into it consciously, trying to get away from, a lot of themes that Tar were about constraint, an extreme naturalism. It was about a depiction of space that would never allow the feeling of source. It had to be so constrained, and you'd never break that illusion of this could be real. And with, True Detective, it was a slightly bit different because in essence, it's a procedural piece, it's cops. And I think I wanted, if I had applied the same constraint to it, it would have become more of a Scandi, kind of drama. And we wanted to make it very visceral. And I wanted to use the lighting more along the lines of, it should have a more utilitarian character, because I figured if you spend all your winter months in complete darkness, you start having a different relationship to lighting. You basically, you will set your own light level, so to say. So if I go into the office, I might not just switch on one light during the day, but I might switch them all on because I want to simulate brightness and darkness. And I also felt that for an audience, that kind of a wave would be necessary, that, you could watch it almost like a traditional show where some things was very bright and some things were very dark. So as opposed to basically saying it's dark, so it's always dark. It should have, like music. It should be loud. It should be quiet. And the highlights, I always felt that, they should be like screaming guitars to stick with the music, and the darkness should be all encompassing. And if you should have the feeling, you switch off the light, you disappear. And so that was the artistic side of it. And the practicalities were, of course, invigorating. It's our profession, at times you live very weird lives because we disappear, go to places and then work like 16 hours a day and everything stops. But it also has great privilege, because to be standing in these environments at night at minus 17 degrees is also something that it's an experience, and in both shows, Cate Blanchett and Jodie Foster are both actors at the absolute height of their ability and legacy. So it's I was very lucky and privileged.
I love the way you put that, the way you talk about light in this atmosphere, right, in a place that is totally dark. That was exactly my sense. Particularly, she walks into the whether she's in the police station or they're in one of their little huts and everybody turns all the lights on. It doesn't really matter, because as soon as you give us an exterior on any of these facilities, you realize just how alone they are. And that's one of the things I think the camera captures so well, and maybe in direct sort of conflict with the tone of the prior seasons of the show, which depicted loneliness through massive space. Generally, this one does it through only the space that you can see, and I think that the nuance of using light to depict the entire scope of the world, knowing that everything is beyond that, is gorgeous and brilliant. So huge fan, clearly.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I remember when I read the script and the first page. And I've always wanted to go to Iceland. So by the time I received the script, I knew this was going to shoot there. And it describes this beautiful sunset. I'm going, oh, okay. And then it was literally half May on the first page. It says, the sun is going to set to never come back up again. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be a lighting job.
Yeah,
So
right.
the
Right.
cinematographer, or the lighting cinematographer got very excited. The one that would just love to go out in the countryside and shoot a beautiful sunset was obviously in mourning for 6 months.
Did you find was there a practical location for all of the tunnel stuff?
No, that was actually, so there's, of course, many people to credit. One is, Issa Lopez, the director and showrunner, who brings a great cinematic sensibility to the table. And she was very open to, and receptive to the way that to what I was bringing to the table. And then there's the production designer, Dan Taylor. And we saw the tunnels at the end posed quite a specific conundrum. One was they had to feel absolutely real, but obviously we couldn't shoot in a real ice cave. And secondly, we had to tell the story, which was quite crucial for Isa, is that once you go into those tunnels, they have to feel so long that by the time you pop out the other end, and I guess we can spoil it now, and you pop out at the station, you have to have the feeling that they could never seen the station where they entered. So it had to feel like a journey and a maze. And we were only able to achieve this by Dan built us 3 segments that we basically used by different styles of lighting and different arrangement of lenses, and to construct a journey that could take forever. And then we had another 2 elements where when they actually fall and break through the ceiling of one, and then we had the one that led us up to the station. So it was a bit of a puzzle. And we spent about, I think, good parts of a day and a half shooting that. But it was a beautiful sequence to shoot because the 6 episodes starts with a 5-minute sequence where not a single word is spoken. It's very, very, very cinematic in that sense.
Austere. I mean, the semi-opacity of the material used in those tunnels. I mean, it was just gorgeous. And you say, like, obviously we couldn't shoot in the tunnels. Man, I was bamboozled. I was completely tricked. It felt absolutely real to me. So,
No, it did.
Consider me a useful tool.
And we had the same thing with the grader, because by the time we were doing the final grading, also somebody to mention is a woman called Jet Omushebi who works in London, beautiful color timer. By that time we had all seen it for like months already in the rough cuts, and everybody was obviously obsessed about, God, we cannot give it away. Is this real? Does this look good? And she actually said the same. I thought it's real, so.
Yeah.
Nice.
Extraordinary.
All of this, the way that you were talking, it made me think of John Alton, cinematographer, had written this book ages ago called Painting with Light, which really spoke to how cinematographers approached their work and how it really is this painterly aspect that you're taking as you approach the set and what you're seeing and the mood you're capturing. I mean, there's all those different layers of what you're capturing with lighting, right? Obviously, it just needs to look like a location where actors are going to do their job and the director is going to tell the story. But then also you're creating a mood and a tone that may be set for the entire film, but also perhaps just for the scene or sequence. And so there's all of those things that you're bringing into it, and that's depending on genre as well. And you've worked on a variety of things: horror films like Antlers, comedy films like the Johnny English Strikes Again or Mordecai, and plenty of different TV series. Pachinko is another one that you've worked on recently. When you're approaching all these different projects and then all of these different elements, like what goes into the thought process? Obviously, there's a lot of conversation with the director and the team, but to really kind of take your tools and figure out, what do I want to do here to kind of craft all of those different elements to make this come to life in a very specific way?
Well, it's a complex question.
Yeah, I love that. Andy's got the complex question. I love ice, man. Talk more about that.
No. I mean, it's such a because it made me think about it. Because some of it is, of course, I do enjoy a form of visceral, like more a responsive form of working where you bring yourself and your sensibilities to something, and you start a process, and that's not necessarily an intellectual process from the start. So what I try to do is I try to get practical very early on and shoot something, and then show that to the director. And ideally, he or she wasn't even part of that little test, because then he or she can just watch it, and then you kind of start calibrating your linguistic system to say, oh, I like that. Oh, I see, I like that. With Todd, for example, I've spoken about this in the past already, but when we looked at a test, the first test, he said, "Oh, that looks really lovely. That looks like a movie with a capital M." But I'm not. I don't want to do a movie with a capital M. And to me, that's like a real epiphany. I say, "Oh, okay, I get it." And then you work yourself with ESA. We did tons of tests. I actually used back then had just come out, the Alexa 35, a camera that actually allows you to burn in textures into the frames that they can't be changed anymore. And we had Ari develop a couple of things for us. So it's like as if you start making music together, jamming, sort of thing. And then that builds one thing, and then one thing comes to another. And ideally, by the time you actually shoot, then you've almost, created a inner framework that then allows you to just do things. I remember the movie with the capital M reaction actually was to the exact combination that I'd used on Pachinko, which I just come off before Tar. So I'd literally done something where I was 100% convinced that's beautiful. And then suddenly you look at it and you go, God, that's actually, that's so loud. That's crazy. How could I have ever thought of that, So it's a more for me, at least, it's a more of an organic process.
Context is everything, though, because Pachinko doesn't scream at all. At those, it's just
yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, it is a weird thing. Probably I guess it's even applies to watching films. How you watch films different when you watch with somebody, and somebody you really enjoy something, and you say, oh, let's watch this together, and you watch it, and you're like, I don't know, I could have liked this. It's an interactive, as much interactive in viewing as it is in making.
You've got this turn. I like to think about, how to describe the tone and tenor of a particular DP's contributions, right? So I'm looking at what is it that makes Florian's movies a Florian movie. And I start to get a real sense when you look at things like Antlers and Pachinko and True Detective and Tar. And now you're working with Jay Roach on The Roses, and Andy Samberg is in it. And there is very little about Tar that I can envision in The Roses.
Yeah.
Well, and I just have to say, it's The Roses with Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch, which to me screams a very particular type of project.
It does, absolutely.
Then you add Andy Samberg and Kate McKinnon, and I'm like, oh wait,
that's a different
my brain
screaming.
has to stop. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know what to expect with this anymore.
That's actually, the perfect description of what attracted me for sure. I think obviously there won't be the same amount. The darkness is more in the humor than in the light. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I've always been interested in comedy. Strangely, I mean, back when I shot Johnny English, I have back my kids were small, so there was Mordecai even more so. They they loved Johnny Depp from the Pirates films, and so there's something to be proud of when you're at home. But I also find that good comedy is almost, to me, it's like the opposite of a thriller, because it's all about timing. Everything is about timing. And there's the only thing it's a bit, it's not so rewarding for cinematography, because in essence, the cinematography has to step back, because the main aim is to deliver the joke. But it's interesting how many choices you have to leave left and right to actually tell that joke. And it's a very conscious process. And, I was lucky in a way that Johnny Depp and Rowan Atkinson, they are comedic, physical geniuses in one way. So, and it's really interesting to work in that field. Also, it's brutal, because if it isn't funny, you don't succeed. Like you can watch a film and you kind of go, oh yeah, oh, it looked lovely. It didn't really do it for me, but comedy is basically, if it doesn't work, you're out.
That
And
was true. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was, I mean, I absolutely love shooting these very different. I can't really speak about the film because obviously it's still in production, but just the cast was, delightful to work with, and the amount of improvisation that happened when you work with comedians it is funny. You do laugh.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and
More
I
fun.
mean, it's a pedigree film, right? You working with Jay, I imagine, who comes with a pedigree of some just destroyingly funny movies, that he's got in his CV.
100%. I mean, I think he's an architect of humor. And he's also a true mensch, and he's a very, very beautiful person to work with. So it was a really interesting experience. I hope it'll be as funny. I'm sure, but I hope, of course, that's always the hope. It's as funny in the end as we felt it was when we shot it.
Right. This is just kind of a side question, but you had worked with Antonia Bird a while back, and she was one of your mentors, I believe. Every time I hear her name, I always wanted to shout from the rooftops, more people need to go watch Ravenous, because
Oh,
I loved that movie so much. What a fantastic film.
so for the audio, I'm actually kneeling now.
Oh,
I'm kneeling. I mean, I'm before Tarkovsky because Ravenous. That. I mean,
yeah.
my story with Antonia is very that she actually is the reason why I'm here, literally, because I was it was about 2003, so I'd been out of film school actively, for like roughly 4 years, and she came to Germany to shoot this film about the attacks of 9/11, and it was about the formation of the group around Muammar Atta and how they met in Hamburg. And she had she couldn't bring her regular DOP because he wasn't available, and the German service production introduced me. And I was very young at this point, and I always think that she chose me because I was a boy, and it was in essence a film about boys. She was a fantastic director. She was a woman director at a time, and there were very, very few of them. And she was highly political, and she was so supportive. For the years afterwards, I mean, to this day, I carry the same mobile phone that she gave me, the same mobile phone number, because we shot a little bit in London, so she gave me a phone that she had. And I didn't know who she was when I got the job. So when I checked out her work, obviously there's Priest, which is a beautiful film, but I watched Ravenous, and I thought, man, that is just what a beautiful, intelligent, metaphoric film that is.
Yeah, it's a powerful film, and again, I saw that she had been a mentor of yours, and what a way to kind of like find your start with somebody who's got a vision like she had.
And she was interesting because we would very rarely talk practical. You would just, you would sit in the little scouting bus, and you would talk politics in this instance, because it was about politics in a way, the film. And then she would just block in a way that was just visual from the start. This was a little film that was full of, people with beards going more and more crazy, and in tiny rooms hiding, and so it was very interesting how she staged the actors, and she really workshopped them. Lots of them were first time actors. They came from all over the Middle East. She's a truly invigorating person, a voice that I think would have deserved. Unfortunately, she died about 10 years ago. She would have deserved to be around longer, to have, she would have made some more beautiful films, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a good point. Let's now, since you've been on your knees, very super
Exactly.
Antonia Bird, let's shift our focus and talk about or remain in contemplative silence about Tarkovsky's Mirror.
Oh man, I think we have to remain in contact. Yeah, we spoke a bit about it. How did you guys? What do you think about that choice?
Well, I mean, because you had sent a list of films, and we typically will we'll eliminate anything that we've talked about before. And then we kind of just assume, and maybe I need to make this clear with people, but we assume that it's in preferential order. So we're like, well, Mirror's on the top, so we'll go with that one. And hey, we haven't talked about Tarkovsky, and it would certainly make for an invigorating conversation. So,
Oh wow, okay. Well, then I have to say, for some people who listen in, that Blade Runner, I think, was on the list as well. So,
right.
because
Yes, it's not all
obviously
Tarkovsky.
in my age bracket, Tarkovsky is also, maybe a more common thing. No, what has always, I have always been fascinated by his way of, and in that sense, actually, there's something interesting to say about The Mirror in particular, about his way of moving the camera. And I think in the case of The Mirror, he also worked with a cinematographer that he only worked with once. I think a guy called Grigori, obviously he would be Russian. Rehberg, I think his last name.
Rehberg, something like that.
Rehberg, yeah. And he was considered a bit of a genius. In Mosfilm, in the studio, people, and at film school, people would refer to him as the genius. So he was quite an eclectic character. I think he died in his 60s, probably in the maybe in the 90s.
Yeah, 99 it looks like.
99, yeah. And he started shooting Stalker, but then they fell apart, and somebody else came in to finish that. Because I think that there's one thing about Mirror, so Tarkovsky has this way to move the camera in a way that I think in The Mirror, I would say 80% of the scenes are shot in one shot.
Right.
And when you start watching this consciously, you think, oh yeah, now the camera pans across and now I see the other person. And then suddenly, the camera, the guy or the woman sits in the background of the shot and say, oh, he manages to transport the emotion of the scene from a single point of view, the point of view being the camera, not like the point of view of a character. And I think that is so amazing. And with The Mirror, I think what comes to the equation there is that somehow, some of these setups are so complicated with the reflections and faces turning, and then you look right into a mirror and then the camera pans off. And the lighting, especially out in the house, is so on the point. I think that it really feels there were two people that really lined up, brought their minds into absolute parallel to make this film together. I think it feels to me like the perfect collaboration between an amazing genius director and a very, very genius cinematographer.
I agree. I watched it yesterday for the first time. I had never seen it. I watched it yesterday for the first time with my wife, who lived in Russia for a time and speaks the language. And her report is, man, the poetry is just butchered. It is such a beautiful sequence if you understand the original Russian material. And so I feel that's sad to me. Your comments on moving the camera are spot on. Earlier this morning, I put it on my new Vision headset and watched it on the virtual big screen, and it was that much more of a moving visual experience, especially the sequences that are shot dark, that are isolated on a character, and the pushes and pulls that allow them to change the scene practically around the character were stunning. They were gut-punchingly stunning in this thing, even though I largely had no idea what the hell was going on for much of the movie, and who I was looking at, and how I was referencing it. Andy had told me yesterday, before you watch it, maybe read the Wikipedia entry, and that was a line. That was really important to just kind of keep it. But the second time this morning, I realized, maybe I'm overthinking the need to really understand narrative. That's not the point. That is not the point of this movie, in my view.
I think, when you watch it again, which I really recommend, and, I've watched it maybe 4 or 5 times now, maybe 6. the narrative is more accessible. Obviously, we're fighting with the language because you have to read the subtitles, and then I think we lack some of the immediacy of the iconography that in which you can depict it because it's not our culture,
Of course,
But
yeah.
today I was so amazed because it's basically the story of this guy who's obviously been divorced. He's fighting with his wife about the custody about his child, and then his wife reminds him of his mother. And she says, well, your son will become like you. And then he says, well, get married because otherwise I was raised only by women. And the rest is just the associations with this narrative plot. And what I took from it as really feeling invigorated, but also overburdened and forced into silence, either professional or privately, is, when you read a script and it says, okay, there's the scene where the woman runs into, the mother works in a printing factory, and she has, I don't know what the English terms is when when they used to set the letters to go through the machine.
Typesetter.
A typesetter, yeah. So she feels she has made a mistake. She runs in there and says, God, we got to stop, we got to stop, we got to stop. They find out she hasn't made a mistake. And then the one coworker accuses her and says, Scott, you're such a drama queen. You know how much coverage I would have suggested to shoot that to get every emotional beat? And the guy just shoots with this woman running into the factory. He sometimes goes a bit slow-mo. Then she runs to the book. She sits down at the book and she goes through the pages. You don't cut to the close-up of the book. You don't cut around to see her face. But you completely understand what's going on, And I think this trust that you will convey what's happening if you place the camera in the right position, that is just almost an art that seems to be dying.
Well, and it was so fascinating in that particular sequence because, like, I understood, okay, so she might have missed a word in her proofing process and is trying to find it, but you start getting a sense as to possibly like how much this is affecting or everybody else who works there is starting to get in on it. Not because we're cutting to all the different reactions, but because as we kind of follow her, suddenly we'll see like that intern pop into frame, and then some other guy pops into frame, and he's just like, well, it's too late now, we're already done. Like, and just like people just kind of keep showing up, and like at the end when she gets back to her desk, there's some other guy who shows up and he brings alcohol and stuff, but it's like we haven't seen cutaways to them. It's just they've been flitting in and out in the corners of our eyes, almost like, just on our periphery in the frame of what we're seeing. So we have this sense that they're all part of this process, that this thing that she has created, but done in a way that you just don't normally see. And it allowed it to still carry the same weight, but it was done in such a simple but specific way.
Well, I think the other piece of that, Andy, is that because they don't cut away, I am the person of the camera as a viewer, right? They've anthropomorphized the camera and put me in that place. And it trusts the audience to keep up, but it also trusts Margarita Terrakova to be able to perform with her shoulders and her fingers turning pages in a way to convey without cutaways, without having to force the emotional focus beats. And the reveals, like you mentioned, the reveals in passing of these other important people that are just in world, it is wonderful, especially toward the end when you realize there's like a whole gang of people behind you. They're like following you around, like they're just like the entire office is now huddled around you. And I thought that was awesome to just reveal that to me as a participant in this exchange.
There's, and I think if you watch the film consciously, again, then there's so many small little things where they constantly are so clever with what they show, what they don't. That, the first shot is after this, and completely mysterious opening of the guy who stops stuttering, which to this day I have not understood. But it's always very impressive.
I wanted to talk about that one, yeah.
But then you cut to this medium wide shot of this woman sitting on the fence, and it's her, the actress, and she smokes, obviously, which is always very compelling for me. And she looks terribly attractive in this Russian way. and she is by herself, and you understand this woman is alone. And then the camera tracks forward and then reveals, because it's, we are tracking now and the parallels start shifting, that there's a guy walking towards her. So, in a more traditional, say a way of shooting with beats, you would have maybe set her up. Almost the shot that he starts from and makes everything work from is almost something that we would consider, oh, that's the nice looking shot, And then you would go around, you'd cut to her face and now you understand, oh, she's sad. And then you would cut to her POV, oh, look, there's a guy coming. And he does it with one movement. And in this sequence, I think he's using maybe 2 or 3 camera positions that all pan or travel to tell the entire story of these strangers that run into each other. Then they sit and the fence breaks and they walk off again. And on the Criterion Channel, there is a documentary about the cinematographer. And the first AD, the assistant director of Mirror, is this woman, and she's being interviewed on that. It's a fascinating person to speak about this, because the attention to detail they applied. She in that sequence, she was talking about all the weeding she had to do because they had to pull out just to give the greenery a bit of a shape. And I'd watched the documentary before, and then I watched the film again. And, that moment when the guy then walks away and stops, for a moment, at least the way I received it, is the roads less traveled. If he turned around, maybe they could become a couple, something like that. The attraction is kind of palpable. He stops, and then the wind blows. And obviously the wind they controlled, because it is being, the gush of wind is like this machine that's directed, And the film is full of these effects and very consciously shaped material, I think. It feels like, oh, they just went out in the woods and shot. But I think the amount of control they executed over each element of the frame was tremendous.
Well, and Tarkovsky's reputation being what it is, it feels like they maybe did just set up a camera and tell everybody to wait in meditative silence until the wind came.
Well, there's this one bit, and I thought that's also why this is, and that's actually a true observation you made. That's maybe there's an element why this is getting more and more rare, that films like this can be made this way. The first AD was talking about one of the sequences when the actress walks through the old house as the mother, and the little kids around. There's these sequences where the camera goes through the rooms and they run around, and then they see him reflected again, and it's almost like a 360. And she said that the Gregory Rehberg took 2 days to light this. 2 days. And that Tarkovsky would occasionally call for the first AD and check on the DP if he was getting ready, and she was using this story as a example that Tarkovsky was so trusting of him that he wouldn't hover, whereas with all the other films she and him had done before, he would always set up the shot and then he would hover, but he knew this guy was cooking up something special. And just to have the time, to basically say, and then I don't know how long it took them to shoot this, because they had to, the kids, they have these sequences with animals in it, and fire and water and milk and, glasses breaking and milk dropping, Maybe this was only possible at obviously, as much as they were suffering of the Soviet system, there was also a different time frame to make films,
Yeah, I suppose there's part of it there. When you have these government-funded projects, there could be a little more freedom in the way that you're able to actually put the project together. Because, just so people understand, 2 days of lighting a set is an awful lot of time. Like, how much time are you regularly given, on average, to get a set lit?
Well, that's a hard one to say, because obviously when we do things like pre-light, when we go in on a big stage, 2 days of work, that would be, it could be even longer. But to me, if you had shown me this house and if I were to be taken to this house with a director, and you would say, well, I want to shoot this here, I would probably say, well, if you give me 2.5, I would say, oh, we need some time, maybe 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and then everybody would already go, oh, well, you better be done by then, because obviously my framework, of course, would be that this would be a low budget film, maybe 25 shooting days, so the canvas would be limited. Obviously, with people, I don't know where a new Tarkovsky would come from. I think it would definitely have to be somebody who controls the production process completely. Maybe shoots very, very cheaply, but because of that, can shoot for a long time.
Yeah, because it does seem like in this location with so few people, I mean, obviously the camera moves are critical, and getting the camera to move the way it needs to see what we want or what he wants us to see, and to have the people hitting their marks and being lit the way that he wants. I mean, there is some complexity there for sure. And as you already brought up, when you're involving all these mirrors, that also adds a layer of complexity, because like, what is the mirror going to see? If the camera dollies this way, is it suddenly going to be seen in the mirror in a reflection in some way? And I just, imagine that's very complex.
And I think the complexity of the lighting was probably not just, it was hiding. I think half of the time, I'm sure they were hiding lights and having to, build them and rig them in complicated positions so that you would not see them reflected, But beautiful. And, the other thing that I always find interesting, so it's such an abstract film in one way. And then the sequence when he remembers as a child to be trained in a shooting range, which is deep winter, and then they play this game on the instructor that they have a hand grenade, which is fake, and the guy thinks it's real, and then takes off his helmet, and you see half his skull is missing as an injury, probably from the war. And then he cuts to this documentary footage. Do you remember that? Where the Russians were going through I mean, to me, even today, I knew it was coming. The guy who literally naked, carries in some, big box of ammunition through those, for those who haven't seen, there's like not propaganda, but say original footage from World War II, and the hardship of those images is just breathtaking, I think,
Yeah, and I mean, I was reading about that footage because I wasn't sure. That was a trick with this film, is like trying to figure out what some of the actual wartime footage that we were seeing throughout it was, because I was like, I'm not sure. Like, obviously there was World War II footage, then there was the Sino-Russian war footage that we had, and I guess that footage was the crossing of some critical river during World War II. It was a very difficult journey for the Russians to take to kind of get through this, just this incredibly messy location with all of their gear. And that was what was striking with this is, we have the naked guy carrying all the stuff down into the water. And then they have this raft that is clearly too small for all the stuff they're trying to put on it, because then it cuts to a shot of it collapsing under it all. And then they still have to kind of get all of this stuff moved. And it's just kind of a fascinating look at the time. And you had mentioned earlier, like, there is this element to the recency of this film, probably for people watching it in Russia who had a better and a stronger connection to all of that than we do now. But still, like, when you read about it and think about, like, the challenge of working through situations like that in wartime. And this is a war film. I mean, I think a big part of it is like his youth as a kid whose dad went off to war. He's trained, as you were talking in that footage of, like, on the shooting range, and all of that is like these memories that he's having from later in life, thinking about, like, I don't know, the way I read it was just how much that kind of painted his life and kind of shaped who he ended up becoming. And all of that sort of hardship that the soldiers were going through, I think it's just reflected on all of the other people that also were dealing with it in their own ways.
There's another clip on Criterion. I don't know if you saw the little interview. It's only like 4 or 5 minutes long in French for French television with Tarkovsky talking about the film, and he really leaned in on the fact that this was his biographical piece, right? That this was in the sense that there isn't a single scene that doesn't come from somewhere in his memory. This is his biography, right? Put together in a piece. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so interesting, that we cut to this footage, which I have to imagine as the audience is something that he saw, right? He didn't necessarily live it directly as a child, but he saw it. And as insofar as this film is a study for introspection, for Tarkovsky, it also feels like a study in normalization of experiences, being able to say, like, I can't disconnect from my past and my present, and who knows where it's coming, but I am the sum of a lot of really hard things, and this is how I see it, and that helps sort of shake the yoke of the fact that we don't have as much of a narrative as other films, even as much as, say, Solaris, but we do have a pastiche of his life, and that feels like an act of generosity as a filmmaker.
That's very beautifully said.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
No, I mean, yeah, obviously, as we're speaking, I'm calling in from Berlin, where I live, and Ukraine is not that far. It's really complicated times currently, and this makes you think. Also what I find so amazing in the way that, because I would agree that to me it feels it. There was some imagery between when the Mongolian or Chinese people are running around with the books, where I thought, oh, maybe they shot that, but the rest seems to be documentary. And I was thinking that if every image that he created is an image of his own, then these images he had just seen. So to me, it felt very plausible. But that he used him, but what I thought was interesting, he didn't use him in the context of, say, a weekly newsreel. It felt, it had the emotional immediacy and the hardship of that without any glorification, because that's something else that I sometimes think about, in our profession. And it is so easy to glorify violence. And part of the film industry is, of course, built on the glorification of violence. And then when you suddenly see what this really means, when, 100,000 people cross a river, and a couple of guys think it's easier to go naked as opposed to making the last uniform they have dirty or whatever, or wreck their shoes. I thought that is so powerful. And I remember in the mid-90s, I had just done my first year film, a short film at film school, and I got invited to a short film festival in St. Petersburg. So I took, with a Polish friend who spoke Russian, we took a train to St. Petersburg from Poland, which took 36 hours or 32 hours to get there, And the film was screened, and he knew some people. And in the 90s, St. Petersburg was just, the film industry there was just flat. There was nothing happening. And I remember that we visited the studios, and they had, on the walls, they had these timelines, like in elementary school when they say from ape, and then at the end it's the human Homo sapiens,
Yeah, right.
Right.
They had a timeline like that with all the stuff they had made, and it started, I think, with Battleship Potemkin or something. I mean, it started like in 19. So the tradition in this industry, and I remember that he knew some people at the studio that were all unemployed, so they invited us for a meal, and I was, 24 or something, this kid, obviously a big thing, a German speaking, the people at that point, probably in the 90s, in their youth, they were all older. They must have been in the late 50s, early 60s. They must have experienced as children the blockage of St. Petersburg. So we have dinner, and he says, they asked me what I'm doing, and I says, well, I'm studying at film school, and they say kinyoshnik. That was the term, kinyoshnik. So somebody who makes cinema, kinyoshnik. And they were so excited about it, and they said maladiets, which means like, oh, little hero. So, and you can, and when I watch Tarkovsky, obviously, I feel this, how this cinema is part of this cultural DNA of that country, and you feel there that this complete disconnect that's happening now, because obviously they are in this bad space, but there must be people, there must be Kinyoshniks there, who we don't know about, and who hopefully someday will make films again, that we can see.
Well, they're still churning some interesting films out when they do make them. I'm always impressed and surprised by Soviet cinema when it does make it over here to the US. There's some interesting voices for sure.
I mean, the other one on my list, was Come and See, which
yeah,
have you saw?
right.
Oh, God.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, what a film
That was what I was like, I don't know if I'm quite ready for that one. I mean,
how
no,
lighthearted of a conversation are we going to have?
But the other thing that's always fascinates me when you investigate, films that were made in essence under communist regime, is also that people had somehow an ability to create images with meaning past the censorship. I mean, you think that Tarkovsky made Andrei Rubelyov, which is in essence a film about Christianity, and he had it financed by the Soviets. That in itself is just crazy. And I've recently come across quite a bit of Polish cinema, and there again they have this ability, with Kieslowski, to tell a story, and everybody watches it and understands something that's behind the image, because that was what they were able, what they had to do, because of the censorship.
Well, and that sounded interesting with this film, because it sounds like the censors were convinced that there was a lot of symbolism and other elements in here that were against what they were preaching. And so like this film had a very small release. They pulled it from Cannes, they did all of these things because they felt like there was that Tarkovsky was being too subversive with this film, even though he kept saying it's not. But I think it was because this film was so different and personal that they couldn't see that. They kept thinking, well, it can't just be that. There has to be something more going on here that you're saying, and surely it's bad.
Yeah, he's in his book, the I don't know what's the English title. It's the it's about something about time. He actually refers to all the letters he got from even mining towns in Siberia. So he's very much taking, making the argument that this is not intellectualism. This is really felt history, and people can relate to it on a very emotional level. And he cites all these letters. So,
is there a central sort of shot for you that you find you keep in your back pocket as inspirational material? I'm curious how much of the Tarkovsky language is internalized versus explicit when you're making your sort of contemporary projects.
Well, no, I listen, and that's then I speak from the bottom of my heart. I mean, Tar is maybe the closest in terms of a film with that bravery that I've made, and like I say, I very much credit, that's just Todd, and it's probably his person, where I could align myself with somebody to make a very, very personal and interesting cinematic statement. So many other films. I think the entire industry element of it, it's more a spectacle. It's almost like a different world, the way we make films now. So I really, I can only, the one thing that I would probably take with me as a reminder is, to find angles that tell where you can run the camera continuously and tell an interesting story, and even capture emotions of 2 or 3 characters in an interesting way. Again, I mean, in Tar, we had the sequence that Todd had from the start conceived as a one-shot. Nowadays, at one-shots, you almost have to watch out that they don't become too muscular, because the thing with Tarkovsky is you never know that it's a one shot. Now it's just they are so intrinsically done. Now you go like, oh, this is, you sit back and go, oh, here comes the one shot. Now let's see, no,
All right.
So maybe there's this about the movement, and I think more on a metaphysical level, maybe it's a reminder to try and find your own voice. Obviously, when we go and make a comedy, then Tarkovsky is not the right reference, but to just.
But would you please make Tarkovsky a reference in a comedy? I would like to see that movie.
Well, there's one comedy, American comedy, that has Tarkovsky as a reference. And this is, Hal Ashby, Peter Sellers.
Being There. You're so right. Oh my God. I would not have put that together. That is a fantastic film.
That is just a fantastic film. That is, to me, the perfect comedy. That's absolute filmic perfection from start to end.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So when you lens your Being There, you'll come back and we'll talk about that then.
But I have to credit all the people that enjoy my presence and that allow me to work with them. So
yeah,
we are only not as good. It's always the conversation that you have. It's actually past saying good or bad. It's a conversation, and that's maybe the other thing, that might be more difficult in industrial filmmaking. That conversation sometimes does not become a singular; it becomes a chorus. And I think maybe that is what made these films so special. It was singular conversations between singular people,
Right.
Anyway,
good point.
I don't know. Did we get too deep here?
There's no too deep. There's no stop.
Right. I feel like there's so many other directions we could, this conversation could really go on forever, because there's so many things to talk about that just I don't know. So many images stick in my head from this film, like when she's floating, or when she's when he's helping her wash her hair, and her hair is just hanging in the water in that dark, just that black and white, when because we have the film changes color stock throughout from color to black and white to kind of a sepia. I guess there's kind of a sepia, but just that
was my favorite shot.
The way that she has her hair just sitting there in the water, and then when she stands, she leaves it that way, and so she's so this weird inhuman shape for a while, and before she shifts. And it's a film that is it's like watching a dream as he's kind of exploring his own life, and it's a fascinating film. I hadn't seen it before, but I always enjoy putting a Tarkovsky film on, and this is definitely one that struck me in just the way that he chose to craft a story that really felt incredibly personal.
I mean, I'm torn about the glasses, but I mean, what you say about having watched it on the Vision Pro, I mean, that's almost an incentive for me now. That must have been an really, really moving viewing experience.
I mean, you have no idea how fast your brain is tricked to feel like you're watching an old film on an IMAX screen. It is extraordinary. And it was a real gift to watch this film. It has been to rediscover these old films. But this one, I don't think I would have appreciated it as much as I had just watching it a second time on a small screen. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Highly recommended.
There's our other, we've got Criterion Channel commercial in here, and we've got the Apple Vision Pro commercial in here.
Yeah, because Apple needs all the help they can get. Those ruddy little upstarts.
Well, Florian, it has been such a fantastic conversation with you today. Thank you so much for joining us to chat about this incredible film. I really appreciate it.
Well, I thank you really for having me. You are fantastic hosts. And if I don't go into a solitary retreat for the next 15 years and I do make something else and I have another film and I really want to talk about, I'll be back in a second. It's a really beautiful beautiful situation with you too. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Florian. That means the world.
Well, we really appreciate it. Do you have any place out there online that you direct people to go to kind of follow you and keep up with what you're up to?
Not really. I mean, I am on Instagram, but I'm too old for it, I think. No, just go and check out the movie. Don't look for me. Go to your movie theater around the corner. Just do me a favor. Anybody listening, as opposed to clicking on some website to find my little humble piece of self-advertisement, go to a cinema in your town and watch one film. That would be just all it needed. Because I think that's the communal viewing experience is unbeatable, and we have to keep that alive.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Either that or the Vision Pro. No.
Yeah, either that or the Vision Pro, where you've shut out the whole world.
Yes. Sorry.
But listen, you can go to a lot of cinemas to pay for that piece of glass, man.
That's true.
I can go to cinemas for the next. No, okay, good.
You guys, it's breaking up. The connection's breaking up.
Right.
Okay.
Well, again, Florian, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate you joining us here today. And for everyone else out there, we hope you like the show and certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network and the Next Reel family of film podcasts. The music is Chomp Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at The Next Reel. Learn about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time. Hey, Pete, have you ever been fascinated by the allure of secret societies throughout history?
Are you kidding me right now, Andy? I live for this stuff. From the Freemasons to the Illuminati, I am obsessed with these clandestine groups. The Rosicrucians and their ancient wisdom, the Skull and Bones Society at Yale with its powerful alumni network. I'm drawn to them. There's something about how they offer this exclusive access to hidden knowledge. They totally capture my imagination. It's like they give this sense of belonging to something greater than oneself.
Wow, sounds like you're looking for one yourself.
Do you even need to ask? Where do I sign? How much blood do I have to give? Are there any required tattoos or brands involved? Is it my first or second born that they need?
Well, what if I told you that there's a secret society for film lovers right here at the Next Reel family of film podcasts, all proud members of the True Story FM network, and you don't have to give any blood or either of your kids?
You've got my attention, Andy. What can you tell me about this cinematic brotherhood?
When you become a member of the Next Reel family, you gain access to a treasure trove of exclusive content, early episode releases, and a community of passionate film enthusiasts who share your love for movies. It's like being initiated into a secret order where you're privy to the inner workings of our shows, including the Next Reel, the Film Board, Movies We Like, Sitting in the Dark, and CinemaScope.
But Andy, as a member, will I unlock a world of bonus content from extended conversations and behind-the-scenes insights to exclusive pre-show and post-show discussions that expand the conversations about the films we love?
Why, yes, the true power of this secret society lies in its community. As a member, you'll join an exclusive group within our Discord community where you can engage in clandestine conversations with other passionate film fans in our members-only channels.
But what about live recordings, Andy? The sacred rituals of any good cinematic order. Will these episodes be scheduled in advance so that members like me will know when to gather around the virtual pyre in real time via YouTube?
Ah, yes. Perhaps the greatest secret of all is that by becoming a member, you're not just investing in your own entertainment, you're also supporting the tireless work of our independent creators and helping to keep the magic of cinema alive and well. So if you're ready to join this elite group of film lovers and unlock the secrets of cinema, head over to truestory.fm/join. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you will gain access to a world of exclusive content, engaging discussions, and a community that shares your passion for movies. Head to truestory.fm/join to sign up.
Andy, I can't wait for you to welcome me into the inner circle of the Next Reel family of film podcasts. I'll see you in the secret chambers. Now, when do I get my ring?
Well, we don't actually offer rings with your membership.
Tattoos or brands? When can I do that?
No tattoos.
Secret handshakes?
Tell you what, you and I can come up with our own secret handshake, okay?
No, I mean, at the very least. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.